You might hate clothing as much as Tyler does, but clothing is a pretty important aspect of the character. And in this episode, we're gonna be making this shirt, and as you can see as well, we're gonna be making few folds. Okay, so let's not wait for anything, and let's go. So in this corner, you can see what I'm going to be pressing. So if it's hard to follow, you can always stop the video and see what. So I'm gonna press 1 to go into the front view, and for creating clothing reference is very important as well. I'm not gonna create exactly the same type of clothing, but this is gonna be very useful for creating folds and how clothing is standing on the body. So first I'm gonna press Shift A to get image and reference. Import the image, or import it in the front view, or you will have it in the rotation which you don't like. I'm gonna go into side view and move close to another references. Maybe I'm gonna put this one up here. Okay, so creating clothing can be a bit annoying because Blender doesn't have too good of the clothing sculpting tools. So what we have to do is model clothing on our own and then try to sculpt it. So the first step going to be looking like retopology, which is kind of is. So I'm gonna go to mesh, circle, and add the circle options. I'm gonna write 8. Now, my rule for retopology is always go as low as possible. You can go even 4 or 6, but I usually go 8 because if I subdivide 4, it's going to be 8 anyways. So I just feel a bit more comfortable using 8 at the beginning. What I'm gonna do is set it up at the armpit. The rotation is to the arm. I'm gonna extend it into middle, go to side view, and position it with the arm. Now, as you can see, I move it in a y-axis, and I can see it's not enough of depth in a y-axis, so I'm gonna SE, which means I'm gonna scale on y-axis. Now I'm gonna go in the side view and extrude, rotate it again so it follows the hand, and scale it. Scale on X because this is X. Rotate it a bit to fit it better. Now we have something like this. For the top one, I think I'm gonna add 3 loops. For the bottom, oh, maybe you cannot see. For the bottom, I'm gonna add 5. Just so it looks like very even distribution. Maybe your arms are a bit different size, so the distribution will be a bit different. What I'm gonna do is try to move everything into place. Now it's not too important to have it perfectly fine because we will still move it in the sculpting mode, but having a correct base always gives easier and better results quicker. Alright, so I'm just rotating it to align with the armor rotation. Let's see, maybe top needs some of worked as well. Right, so when I have this, I always like to go into modifiers and use a shrink wrap, boom, and apply. Then you can add another one. Yeah, always miss it where it is, and we can even add a mirror modifier at this point. Now you have something like this, and I start from arm because the connection is very important to the body and arm, and if I start from the body, then it's gonna be very hard to connect to my arm. I can see that I did the rotation a little bit bad, but first we'll need to set up our snap tool and set it up to faces. I'll move this a bit higher because I see the rotation was not set up correctly in the modeling phase. Well, this is still a modeling phase, but before shrink wrapping. Now I have the armpit. I'm gonna extrude the new face into it. Have a rotation following it. Now you can kind of take the body and just, if your body is perfectly set up, you can take and select the places which you want for your clothing. And just use Shift D to get a duplicate and Alt S to scale it, and you will have like a clothing. But okay, what is this? But I like to model it on new to get a little cleaner, because this is a bit subdivided face, and havoc on the lower kind of makes it better for me, and it's gonna be a bit different from the body topology anyways. Okay, so now it's going to be a bit harder, but what I do, I just try to extend from the arm to the shoulder. You can even use this for remeshing your characters. Okay. All right. So now it's going to be a bit harder. And this is the place where people get stuck with, but what I'm gonna do is, I can see that I have to drag this mesh down because I need some topology for the body, but I can't drag this one down because it's gonna create a weird face. If I had, you can see. And it's not really following the mesh too well. So from this point, I'm gonna extrude one loop here, another one from here, and have something like this. Then extrude it to the body. And at this point, you can have a lot of playroom. I'm gonna have a tall neck for my clothing. So I'm gonna start with this straight line with the tall neck. Try to make the separations between vertices very similar. Now I can connect these to be faces, and same for here. And maybe fix the separations because they seem a little bit off. There's still many times I will have to go over it and fix the separation. At this point I can connect this way, but I don't really feel like doing that because I will still need a lot of topology in this place. What I do about my retopology is always set up the body the easiest way. I think it's going to be for me to retopologize in the ways where I don't really have to think a lot and have a pretty clean topology. So I think that this is gonna set up a nice base for me, a nice milestone for easier to recognize how I should build. So what I'm going to do is not actually connect. And I need vertices on my mirror as well, because my clothing gonna have a separation in the middle. And at this point, I can just drag it up. I tried to look how many these ones have and not add too many on the side. So connecting them will be flawless. This way I can connect them and not worry too much on how many I should add or take away. All right, a few more. And at this place, a dilemma. So what you do is just do a lot of testing and looking what works and what doesn't. I don't want to add too many polys and make it way too crowded. But at this point I can see that I have 5 vertices selected and I cannot connect them. And I feel like I added too many in here. So maybe I can add less. Because we only thing we care about now is having the least possible vertices while having a nice topology as well. So this is not the best way because the space is very big and pole. I'll always take few looks at the mesh and see maybe I can do something different. Maybe even do a few tests. Maybe I can connect this one. And this one would be a less bad. And it's all about testing and looking. I think this is gonna be fine. It's not that bad. I'm going to connect a few vertices. So at this point, shrink trap is not helping us because it's gonna morph to the body and I have a bra in a place and it tries to follow a bra and the body. So again, I don't really mind how many details I'm losing right now from retopologing this way. All I care is to have a general shape and a nice topology. Nice clean topology is the most important part of retopologizing your clothing. Okay, let's hide the body to look how it looks like. I don't really like this. I'm gonna try connecting it and see. I don't like how big this face is. It's always good to look at other people topology. The problem is I don't think this is going to be enough, so I have to add more. The least poles, the better. But it's not too bad of the place to have poles because this place won't have nor bending motion animation, and it doesn't really attract too many folds. Where you're going to have folds, it's very important to have nicely shaped faces, quad faces. In general, clean topology is very nice for everything. One of the things why you might hate doing clothing in Blender is because you might need to retopology them twice. First one is setting up the base for sculpt, and the second one is when you finish your sculpt. But we will try to use technique where we only needed to do it once. All right. Again, in this place we won't have a lot of folds, and for neck bending it's gonna be enough of this loop. At this place I can have a separation. And in general, for retopology, I recommend to not look at this place and see like, oh my god, it's gonna be so hard to fill it. Just chill and move up ahead with another things, because when I'm gonna fill this one, it might be that I will have to redo it and fix it a little bit, but by doing this, I make this so much clearer for myself, like what I have to do. So I can see that I cannot do too much right now with that place and just connect, so I connect it. But at this place, I kind of start figuring that I can do a bit different. At this time, I can see that I probably should be connecting these two places. Can't really do anything about this one, so I will have to connect it. It's a little bit too many polys, and I think too little on the side. So I'm gonna move them a bit back on this side, because I'm having way more in here than in here now. Actually going to delete this. And see how it looks now. I want to delete this face. Delete this one as well. And try getting it face from here. Actually don't like how I did it. It might be that I will still remake it and it's going to be the same, but it just makes me look at it a bit more clear. I really feel like I don't need that. So I'm gonna clear it and just extend. Because again, I don't really need that much. Now, do I need that many in here? Probably yes or no. If I delete this one, I can easily connect this. That means that I might not need this. And now I try to readjust to the new topology. When you do it many times, you will end up doing it very similar every single time, but when you do something new, you will still need to experiment and sometimes redo it a few times, because you do one mistake and you keep going forward and you just keep making mistakes and keep modeling while having that mistake. Okay, so that's looking a bit better now. That is looking a bit better now. I feel like I need one more in here, so I'm gonna add one more. Your topology is pretty slow, so this is gonna take a while, but keeping it clean and not having a lot of polys will make this much faster. I always recommend not to look around and feel daunted by it. I only look around to see maybe I can change something in what I already did and not think about what I should do next. Because if I start thinking what I have to do, then it becomes very hard to follow. What I do is just try to add to keep working. Then maybe I see some connections I can do. Again, I can do this. And at this point, I can see there are 5 polys. And this one is in the way, so I can do a few things. I can add one more in here and in here. So I'll have this connection. But this adds a lot of extra topology. What I can do is dissolve this edge and drag this one a bit down. Fill this one like that. And have a bit cleaner and less topology, which I'm gonna do this way. Now, when I kind of finish these parts where your arm connects and get this nice flowing loop, now it's much easier to finish your topology. So what I do is just extrude. I don't really have to replicate whole length of the shirt at the moment. I can do it with the sculpt. I get bored working on one view, I mean front view, and that's why I usually just pan to another view. So you can see 1, 2, 3. So I'll add one here, another one at the end, 2, 3, 5, and 6. So always keep looking at what I already did, and if it follows nicely, if it doesn't, I will dissolve or add another loop connecting these ones. 1, 2, and 3, 4. So sometimes like this might happen, but it's okay. Okay. So remember, don't forget again that this is for clothing and not for the body. So if it's not following up your body perfectly in sync, it's fine. So you may ask why I'm doing this one after not finishing these two, is because when I finish this one and I see these are 2 left, I kind of think, okay, what is going to be the distance in here? And this way it's a bit easier for me to see the separation between vertices, how big or how short it should be. And I kind of enter this one. Now it looks like there's a lot more than here, and it's totally fine. We can add it soon. So I'm not in a hurry or worry. Now it looks like we had very few in here, but when we start pulling them down, it seemed like we have too many, which is fine again. Now I can add a few to have it more balanced. Next, what I'm going to do is shrink wrap to the body and not care about her bra. Apply it. Now what you can do is Shift D to duplicate your object just to have a separate object in case you do something. But I'm pretty sure with my skills and your skills that we don't need a duplication, but just in case you can have it. And at this point, I'm going to apply my mirror. Go into the side view, and I can see that my edge is very uneven. So I'm gonna do is press S to scale and Z on Z axis and press 0. Rotate it a little bit. And I have this base. I'm gonna select everything and press Alt S. And this is for inflate. And we have a base looking like this. Not perfect, but it's pretty good. So what we will be using is multi-resolution. I cannot use it in edit mode, so I'm going to come back and subdivide it. And after a few subdivisions, I'm going to go into sculpting mode. And I'm not really sure if it's working or not, but in mesh filters, there is a relax option. And just drag it, and it should relax or make the separation between faces very similar. So it should be easier to sculpt. Now what I see I missed is our edges getting very rounded. So what I'm going to do is unsubdivide it. And turn off my loop. Oops, I pressed something. Okay, maybe I didn't on the loop. I turn off the loop and drag one loop like this and another one like that. Don't forget that we don't have a mirror, so I have to do the same on this side and at the top. Now when I subdivide to the maximum, the edges will be crisp. And sculpting mode again. So actually for clothing, you'll need a lot of topology. So what we're going to do is first go to the lowest layer and use the grab tool. Don't forget to use the mirror, which is x-axis, and set it up your mesh into the place. So what I'm looking at this point is just have the jacket and the shape which I want. So what I want is it to be a bit longer. Yeah, I accidentally selected that part, so I'm gonna reselect. I want my jacket to be longer, so I'm gonna drag it down. Smooth a little bit, not too strongly, because when it's low poly, the smooth brush will move the shape very strongly. Okay, and I see the first problem. It's this strange line. And I can see that it wasn't connected. When we applied our mirror, something happened. So I can see these two edges are not connected. First thing what you can do is just select everything, and in a search menu, which is F3, write merge and merge by distance. We do have 0 in here, so we will have to fix it manually. What I do is go into wireframe, and I set up where I cannot select the front faces, only the back faces. I'm gonna select them at the center, go a bit higher, select at center, at center, at center. Okay, these ones are way too separated, so I'm gonna individually select them. Okay, I accidentally selected the front, as you can see. So I'm going to select again at the center and look at it now. Maybe move these ones a little bit to better places. What you can do as well is use mirror in here, but it works with some and doesn't work with another ones. Okay, so let's go back into sculpting mode and let's keep reshaping the shape which we need. So the clothing usually doesn't follow the shape of the body to the extreme. At least not a super elastic and tight clothing. So you add a little bit separation that just will not be that visible in the clothing. This line is way smoother. Same goes for here. And I'm going to clear the mask. Maybe mask this place now. And I want my sleeves to be a bit longer. Clear the mask. Now we can subdivide. And just see, maybe you have some problems. Now I can lower the viewport. It's going to be easier. Easier for your machine. Okay, so we have a base. Somewhat of the base. What you can do is use inflate brush as well to, as you can see, the sleeves on the, just a second. you can see the sleeves. Oh my god, is annotations off? They're very similar. These all are same length. So that means the clothing is very similar length. And as you can see, this length is shorter than this one, especially than this one. Of course, in this place, I have more mass mesh on this side. Just have that in mind. But with the inflate tool, I just tried to make it somewhat similar size. Use the grab tool because the gravity is dragging them in the side and not up. Now what I like for the clothing is having the sharp edge. So I'm gonna drag it a bit higher. And I feel like I can already use a lot of polys. So I'm going to subdivide and look at my sub count, and it's close to the 1,000,000. And I feel like that's a minimum you can have for clothing. Of course, you can have less, but it's gonna be harder to make your clothing. What I like to do first is make seams, but some people make seams at ending. What I'm going to do is use front faces on draw sharp and stabilize stroke. I can add more radius. I think default is 75. I add a bit more. And I like to start with the shoulder area. One thing I don't like about Blender Control back is when you turn on stabilize and you don't like the first stroke, you press Control Z, it usually turns off the stabilize option. So I just like to draw it from armpit to the place where I want them to connect. Don't care too much that it doesn't look too crisp. We will fix that soon enough, and I don't really need to do it at the armpit because it's not visible. What I'm going to do is now use pinch and just pinch this a lot. Now I have this crisp seam, but the shape looks very weird. So with the grabbing tool, I'm fixing the shape. Same for the front view. Again, draw sharp. You should look to your reference and see where the seams are. For the jacket, they usually have a lot more seams than for t-shirts or other clothing. Draw another sharp from here. Now don't make your brush too big like I just did, because it's going to be very hard to pinch. I redraw to make it a bit sharper. Maybe I don't really need to do, but I don't know why, it's just my habit. The pinch brush can be a bit bigger than the draw sharp. If you cannot pinch them in a nice line, use stabilize. And the last one in here on the shirt, on the jacket. You can redo this many times. Of course, this is not the final seams. We might have to redraw them a bit later. Don't know why, when these problems came. And we have something like this. So this is only the base, and you can see the clothing doesn't look too nice. Ah, I forgot one more. One more is here. Now you can follow me on every step, or if you're following the reference, better follow your reference. If your shirt is different, you might not need all these seams. It's totally fine. Again, grab tool if I see some strange areas. I see I need to pinch more in this one. And I like my neck area of the shirt, especially very fitting clothing to be close to neck. Again, this distance should be the same in here. Don't forget that. So I'm trying to adjust it to fit everything perfectly. Now controlling clothing is not an easy task. So it might look too perfect. Okay, so we have seams and shapes set up, and at this point we can start making folds. For folds, I use clay strips, sculpt draw, and draw sharp, crease, pinch. So we can remember or write it down. But for now, we use clay strips. For clay strips, I like to build a test shape, which I'm gonna go. And for building your folds, reference is extremely important. So what are folds? Folds are usually attention points. And you can see that at this point, there's a tension point, and there's where your folds start forming. And at this point, the tension drops, so it curves around it. And that's what I'm going to try to do. I have a tension in the shoulder. Actually, I don't really like using mirror for folds, but you can use it or not use it. And by doing on two different sides, you will have a little bit more practice. Okay. So we will build that. Always looks where it ends. I can see it goes a bit inside. It's very important that you find the reference with the same material you want your clothing to be. And don't be afraid to add a little bit of mesh. So I'm gonna smooth it now. Another thing about folds is it's literally a material. So where the material goes up, some of the material goes in. So you can see this parts. becomes darker. So where's the positive? There should be a negative. So I have the positive one, and by craving some of the mesh out, I create some negative. Smooth again. And at this point, I want to form this middle point. Now, sometimes the direction of your brush is very important. So if I pan my camera down and start taking mesh away from the side, it's gonna form a little bit bump on this, which is kind of important. Again, the gravity thing. What's hard about folds is how they connect, and just let me add a few levels in viewport. I feel a bit strange. How they connect and how they disappear. It's the hardest part, I believe. And explaining the process of the folds is very difficult because it is not exactly a very art thing. It's more about physics. So I just think how the gravity and the mesh would behave on the sharp brush. I will just turn off my stabilize. And I recommend looking how people are forming their folds and try to mimic their process. Because I learned a lot of things from other people as well. Testing is important too. So again, this is going to be our elbow attention point. So from that's where our fold's going to start going down. Now you can see I don't really form a lot, but it still does changes to the mesh itself. Just keep that in mind. I like to build up on the base very slowly, and that way it's going to be easier to follow and more accurate. Again, look at your reference images. Always look at your reference. How's the top? There's the tension. Again, we don't have the sport, but we can see a tension point in here. This is where two different sewing connects, creates a tension point. Now, if you have like a big fold and it drops down, it looks very same thickness through the whole. So what I do is use draw sharp and carve in and make it have a different length in a top and a bottom. You can do same in here, as well as creating that negative area. All right. Then you can add a bit more folds. Now I'm using draw. To have this more organic shape to the folds. And you can see a same thickness. So I'm gonna do that. From this point, I'm adding more mesh into the sides so it becomes different thickness, and take some of the mesh away from the bottom of it. Smooth. All right. So I'm still going to use Sculpt Draw and start fixing this one again. It's probably gonna have the fold in here. Okay. Another one from here probably. Again, going on clothing shop, you can see a bit more photos from every single side because this one is from clothing shop. I can go and see back. Okay. Of course, this is not a neutral shape of the clothing, but you can still kind of figure out what's happening in the back. I'm like, okay, maybe I should do this way, how it was. Now, I don't recommend adding too many folds. The more you add, the harder it becomes to control them. And the harder it becomes to make them look realistic. So I can see that I probably need to add more negative place in this. If you see our mesh, just use a grab tool or smooth. And build your fold slowly. You can even use sculpt, draw sharp and holding control to add more sharpness to some of the folds. Of course, don't overdo it, so I'm gonna smooth it. And again, building, smoothing. Okay. You shouldn't hurry too much while creating folds. Just keep that in mind. Again, a lot of time spent going to make it look better. Okay. Again, we want probably more visible folds from elbow point. We're going to make it a bit sharper point as well. Right. At this point, you can add a few smaller detail for yours, for folds. This one I need more into port. And again, I didn't add too much mesh in this place. That's why you can see I cannot really make a smaller points. And when you are for sure that you finished, which is definitely, this is not finished, but you get a rough idea how to create folds, and you would just keep following your reference and adding more and more folds on top. It's really just look which tool you like the most. Again, Sculpt Draw X or Clay Strips, Draw Sharp. Now you may not be sure where I want to use pinch, which I was talking about before, and I'm going to show you now. So when I create this fold, and it seems a little bit big, you can use grab tool to make it closer, or you can use big pinch brush as well. And when you have a lot of overlapping folds, which would be something like this. So let me do a quick demo. Smooth. And this one, as the complicated grab tool, still works, but with the pinch, you can have a bit more accuracy and a little bit more believable results. And yeah, basically that's it. What you can do more is most of the clothing, of course, all of the clothing in reality has some thickness, but this is very hard for the PC to handle, is using Solidify. Now I have a pretty decent machine, so I can add a thickness. And this is how it would be looking. Like a nice clothing. Of course, I can drag this one a bit more out. When I sculpt, I definitely turn off the Solidify sculpt mode. Drag this one a bit out. And yeah. Now you would need to clean up this seam, clean up all these seams, redraw them. I did a mistake in here. But again, I told clothing usually needs a lot of topology. I don't really recommend adding more than 1 million. But somewhere higher, you can have a little bit more precision with the folds and add small folds. Which can look nice in moderation, but they're very hard to make and even takes more time to make them believable. Now the separation's becoming very visible, so I'm gonna redraw it. And you can have way more precision. Now you can actually, with a higher topology, you can make your compression folds way better as well. But again, if you have more than one clothing on your model and all of them will have like 3 million, the Blender is not capable to handle these type of meshes. Just have that in mind. Maybe this fold is too big. Again, pinch tool. So yeah, clothing is usually a lot of practice, understanding of the physics, looking at reference, following tutorials, and knowing what type of material you're making is very important as well. And keeping strong, not giving up. And probably solidify is not going to work too well at this point, and I'm even afraid to add it. Okay, so it's not that bad as I imagined. Solidified makes it weird part. Okay, so that's how usually you can make your clothing in Blender. Thank you so much for watching and following this tutorial, and see you next time.